Accenture and Moneycontrol present B-School Strategy Challenge.
A very warm welcome once again to the 7th edition of the Accenture B-School Strategy Challenge on the theme of Total Reinvention starts here. Since its inception, the challenge has been empowering the smartest minds to discover their potential in strategy and consulting space. It is a highly anticipated program which students from the top B schools in India look forward to, and that is evident from the fact that more than 9,500 students participated in the challenge this year. Well, as we begin the finale today, Total Enterprise Reinvention, Shaping the Future of Businesses, it is our endeavor to acknowledge the continuous dynamic reinvention taking place by organizations in India, and you have renowned speakers here from different organizations talking about that. The panel will deliberate on the common factors that accelerate an organization's reinvention strategy. What challenges and opportunities do companies typically encounter when attempting to pivot to a technology-driven transformation, and how talent plays a critical role in reinvention. The rapid pace of technology innovation, shifting consumer preferences, and climate change are top 3 factors that have accelerated the reinvention journey of organizations. I'm sure you all know climate change has made up for a big part of the G20 joint declaration. Clearly, India has taken on this mantle very seriously, and of course, the innovation will come from companies. Let me begin by asking Raghu here. Raghu, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Shweta.
Can you begin with an explanation on what, in a nutshell, is Total Enterprise Reinvention?
Yeah. So, and some of you may have seen the research as well, but I'll try and see if I can speak of Total Enterprise Reinvention, or TER, in the next maybe 2 or 3 minutes. So we say that Total Enterprise Reinvention is a deliberate strategy. In the past, when companies went through transformation journey, they viewed that as a way to get to something, as a lever to get to something. But now we are saying TER, or Total Enterprise Reinvention, is not about the how, but it's about the what. And therefore, it's more of a deliberate strategy. Now, Total Enterprise Reinvention aims to set new performance frontiers for companies. So when you think of companies, we are saying that they break through existing benchmarks. And in the process, they not only set new frontiers for themselves, but they may also set new frontiers for the industries that they operate in. And the third one is Total Enterprise Reinvention builds on the increasing importance of technology as the core component of these reinventions. And finally, the fourth one is that we look at Total Enterprise Reinvention as a continuous journey of reinventing the business as a whole. Now, there are about 5 or 6 key components that make up Total Enterprise Reinvention. One of them I've already mentioned. It's a deliberate business strategy. And I'm going to very briefly mention the other 4 or 5. The second one, and an important one, is that the digital core is considered as a core competitive differentiator. Unlike in the past, so it's not just about digital core being important, but it's about being the primary business differentiator for the companies. Now, when we say digital core, we are referring to things like cloud, data, AI, your core systems that do the records, and security. Now, what companies need to do when they think about digital core is whether the digital core has the right shape in the form of, is it flexible enough? Is it interoperable or not? And is the digital core, does it have the capacity to enable you to move at speed? I think that's the key. That's something that the clients should, a company should think about. The third one is, as I said, using Total Enterprise Reinvention as your strategy, we expect that it'll break the benchmarks. So usually companies look at existing benchmarks and then they start setting their targets. They say we want to be in the top 5% or maybe in the top quartile or something. We sometimes say that benchmarks are the enemy of the art of the possible. So instead of thinking about benchmarks, if you think about Total Enterprise Reinvention using technology and new ways of working, you will actually be able to set new frontiers for yourself. The fourth one is around talent. talent strategy and people are an essential element of any reinvention. Now, companies are starting to think, so it's no longer an afterthought. You've got to start thinking about talent strategy from the beginning of your reinvention journey. And companies are now starting to look at talent strategy and change management as core competencies too. And finally, the last two, this total enterprise reinvention is boundaryless in the sense that it cuts across all of your silos within your organization and it breaks down those silos. And the sixth element of the total enterprise reinvention is about being continuous. So in the sense that you don't look at reinvention as a periodic thing. It's not an initiative that you start and you come to an end, but instead you build a capability that you can continuously dip into to drive all of the reinvention. Now, so these 6 elements, companies that use these 6 elements, we call them reinventors, and reinventors differentiate themselves from others by looking at business transformation in a continuous fashion. And our research has shown that companies that have embraced total enterprise reinvention, they outperform their peers in financials, they outperform the peers in the technology platforms that they have, and they outperform the peers on the 360-degree value dimensions, which includes things like inclusion and diversity. It includes things like sustainability, employee engagement, customer experience, and of course, all of the financial things as well. So that's total enterprise reinvention. So in short, it's continuous, it talks about talent, and it challenges you to think beyond the benchmarks.
Fantastic. And how should companies go about it to stay relevant in the future to maintain profitability?
We are talking about continuous reinvention. Therefore, there has to be an absolute buy-in from the entire C-suite. It can't be just the CEO or the CFO or one person looking at it, but the entire C-level should buy into this strategy, and they should believe that they will create an organization that can continuously reinvent. So that's key. The second one, which sometimes, at least pre-pandemic, people did not embrace it fully. The second one is that technology today underpins the success of any strategy. So there has to be that commitment and belief that we will rely on technology to drive the strategy forward for the company or the reinventions forward for the company. And the third one, also something that people tend to forget, it's an afterthought, is that you need to think about the talent that you need for you to not only drive the reinvention, but also to sustain the benefits of the reinvention in the future. And when you're talking about continuous reinvention, you also need to think about the talent strategy operating as a continuous wheel, because you need to keep reinventing your talent as well.
Fantastic. Mr. Dawar, I'd like to come to you on this. What are the key tenets of reinvention, and in what ways does reinvention break down organizational silos and tackle capabilities end-to-end?
I think there are 3-4 things that we need to focus on. I think the first is, how do you make it end-to-end within the company? So which means you've got to actually transpose across all the functional barriers. The second thing is it's got to be extremely customer-centric. You can't just be talking about reinvention in a vacuum. It's got to be always with the interest of the customer in mind. The third is there has to be a new approach to how you actually handle leadership and the culture within the organization. And finally, it's about continuous learning and training. And I want to take a few examples. Examples can be used across industries, but I want to take 2 key areas where I want to take some examples. One is the ecosystem leverage, and the second is technology. So if you look at the ecosystem leverage, I mean, if you take a company like Diageo, for example, what they've done is, rather than actually build a capability themselves, and they sensed that non-alcohol beverages are going to become very big, they actually invested in a startup company, Seedlip, and over a period of time, actually landed up acquiring that company, and then massively scaled their distribution of that particular product range, leveraging their own supply chain. So it's important to start thinking ecosystem. You don't have to incubate everything yourself. You can actually incubate by investing in startup companies, just as an example. Another example is in India. I guess if you look at a company like Paperboat, what they do is leveraging technology, but more importantly also modular manufacturing. They are in a position to actually cater to very rapidly changing products depending on the season, and more importantly, the festivals. So, Sharbat during Ramzan, or Kachi Lassi during Baisakhi, or for that matter, Thandai during Holi. That's being innovative. It's being sort of reinventing of what otherwise would be a standard product range. There are many other examples. I think you take a company like Tata Steel in India. For their leadership, what they saw is the leaders were not very comfortable with new technology, even social media. So they used this concept of reverse mentoring, where the junior-most people in the company actually started mentoring the senior people on social media, on leverage of simple technology which we use on our phones today. It's called student mentorship. So I think we've got to break the barriers of our thought process and really look at reinvention differently. And I've just taken two examples. One is ecosystem and second is technology. But there are hundreds of examples there of how companies are actually reinventing their business and growing as a result of it.
Let me come across to you, Mr. Narayanan. We've read so much about how Nestle is adapting data-driven digitization. Can you share some more details on how data is being used to lead your digitization processes?
I don't speak as a consultant because I'm not one. So I'll be less literate than most of the two erudite gentlemen who spoke on the whole process of managing reinvention and change. And let me put it from a practitioner's trench of running an enterprise. I think there are 5 elements that any organization needs, and change and technology is one part of it. The first is culture. I think as corporates, as consultants, we underestimate the value of culture. Culture is that voice and that language that is not spoken, but only practiced. And how that happens and how that is modulated to the objectives of the company is the task of leadership and indeed the task of the organization to make happen. The second is building competence. And I think, again, this is an area of not just training programs and initiatives around educating people. This is on giving assignments, leadership styles of allowing for failures to happen. This is for leadership styles of experimenting in new spaces. This is the leadership style of, in a large corporation, trying to set up little pockets of incubation and excitement. This is the leadership style of trying to ensure that tomorrow starts today within the organization in every sense. So that's the second part. The third one is what I call the Charter of Change. And the Charter of Change has 3 elements to it. One element is people, and I think we've talked about it. To me, the only element, I've been through numerous crises to now count how many times I've been in the fire. But one thing that I've learned is that the only sustainable competitive advantage of corporates is talent. It's not brands, it's not legacy, it is not, belong to a 160-year-old company. But I'm 160 years young because my organization is 75 to 80% millennials and Generation Z. So I have a Gen Z council in my company that advises me. Right? You talked about, I think Sanjay talked about reverse mentoring. Here are guys who are telling me how to run businesses, right? Which is different from just allowing them to help you with social media. And one part of the process part is the technology part. And I think technology is something that we have embraced a hell of a lot, and I want to thank Accenture because Accenture has been a partner in that journey. And there are three elements to it. One is in operations, which is really in terms of the value chain, in terms of manufacturing, in terms of manufacturing processes. Today, for example, we have our factory. Our newest factory is a factory in Sanand, in Gujarat, which is incidentally not only the cleanest factory that you can have and the most eco-friendly factory, but it is 60% women who run that factory.
Can we get a round of applause on
So,
that?
you talk about diversity and inclusion, 60% women, and we have a dozen hearing impaired people on the manufacturing line.
That's
They're
amazing.
producing. So, but what is it that is the hallmark of this factory is that all the female operators are operating on digitized screens. They operate on the robotic space. They operate on the digitized space to ensure that they have real-time control of manufacturing processes. And anything that changes in the parameters is immediately captured by them and corrected as we go along. That's one part of it. The second part of it is in our channel operations. We have a very large project called Midas, which is a analytics, artificial intelligence and machine learning enabled data platform that captures all the data streams that come into the organization and that we have access to. And this is used for real-time decision-making processes. So whether it is the digital habits of consumers, whether it is the shopping habit of consumers, the media habit of consumers, the propensity to purchase particular brands and particular stock-keeping units of the company, whether it is in terms of watching particular types of media or shopping on particular occasions or festival, right? In India, I don't know if you're aware that there is a festival every 6 days. And what do we do on festivals? We eat and drink. And who's center there? Nestle. So this whole system is integrated into what we call clusters. And each of these clusters operates on the data space such that decisions are taken in real time and decisions are taken at the appropriate level in the organization. So therefore, it is decentralized completely. Nobody cares whether I, as the chairman of the company, enjoy a particular brand or not. I mean, that's immaterial. It doesn't make any sense. So from anecdotal management to more analytic management is the journey that we're doing. And the last element of that is now on the digital engagement of our brands. Some of our brands, I mean, I don't know if you're aware that two of our sites, the Maggie site, for example, Maggie.com, and one thing I'm delighted talking to these 32 youngsters is that each one of them is a consumer of a Nestle brand. And the last C that I would like to mention in all of this is consolidation. I think it's very fashionable to talk about the technology and data initiatives of the company. The question that we need to ask as leaders is, so what? Is it making a change in the life of the consumer? And if it is making a change in the life of the consumer, it goes on. So it's a constant process. I think it makes the organization buzz and hum. It makes the organization resonant. It also makes the organization relevant because some of our initiatives on sustainability, for example, we are as a company, and I want all the youngsters here to know, Nestle is a plastic neutral company. The amount of plastic that we use is the amount of plastic that we collect and recycle.
So thank you. That's very, very insightful. Mr. Seth, I'd like to go across to you now. You're a market leader, a legacy brand. How are you approaching reinvention? And can you share any specific focus areas in terms of technology-led investments?
India is a hot story, and we have now we are on an escalator now in terms of the growth trajectory. There are 5 or 6 pillars that I will talk about in terms of reinvention, and I'll start with the scale, which is something that's growing leaps and bounds. So in the context of, let's say, our company, what we are talking about and what we have mentioned in the media is that what we did in the last 40 years, we're going to do in the next 7 years. So the scale is mind-boggling, and therefore the need of reinvention when you are talking of scale, which is significantly large compared to what you achieved in past 4 decades. So one is, how do you reinvent your company, your organization to deal with that sort of a challenge? Second is on the aspect of technology, because technology in this sector is changing very fast. We've seen move towards electric vehicles, we have seen move towards hybrids, alternate fuels, and so on. So how do you reinvent yourself to gear up to the new technology moving forward? And that's one area that we have been working very hard on. And we have made major breakthroughs in terms of technology, where we have talked about, we have brought in hybrid, we are talking about bringing in electric vehicles very soon. The third aspect, of course, is when the organization is so large, how do you ensure a proper digital mindset amongst people and ensure that it is working well? So what we have done in our organization is we have created a digital enterprise which looks at all the initiatives, including the robotic process automation, artificial intelligence, blockchains, and most importantly, the data analytics, in terms of ensuring that across the business verticals, we are able to leverage digital to its best. And we do it based on KPIs. We don't do it based on just projects. There are proper KPIs which we build on each project that we run. The other important aspect is about the skilling, because so much digitization is happening and so much change in technology is happening. So you really need people who are skilled, who have that capability. So it's also a parallel exercise to ensure that you train people and you create people over a period, so that while you grow, you are ready with people who can take on these challenges on both the digital side of the business as well as the technology side of the business. And the last couple of things that I would like to mention, one is on the sustainability, because today it's not about your profit and loss based on your traditional way of running business, but it's also on how efficiently do you run your business in a sustainable manner, and what are your targets towards your society and how you are fulfilling them. I mean, in terms of your carbon net zero, in terms of your ESG targets, in terms of your commitment towards CSR and so on. So that becomes a very important aspect in terms of growth for any organization moving forward, and therefore you need to align and yourself to that reality as well. And finally, I think most importantly, how is your customer reacting to your service levels? Because at the end of the day, it is very important what is your turnaround time with your customer, both in terms of sales and after sales, and what score does he give you on your service that you provide to him. So there is a lot of digital intervention that we are using now in these areas to ensure that the service levels of the customer is minimum, they are catered to in a timely manner. So I think these are large aspects which calls for a major amount of reinvention within the organization to make sure that you are future ready, to make sure that you are able to grasp technology fast, you have the skills, and you have the digital mindset amongst the people. So that's broadly what I would say.
Let me come across to you, Mr. Mehta. With rapid shifts in consumer behavior and preferences, and we've heard representatives from the auto industry, from the FMCG space, what are the key challenges that companies are facing today in a very dynamic world?
How consumer preferences, how companies had to reimagine how they serve, what they serve, whom they serve, how they connect. And you take the examples, we heard from Suresh on how, you are interacting digitally. There were companies whose business model was on an existential risk. So you were not able to reach your customer. You had to collect money from them, let's say for a finance company. You have to repay loans. If you're a high street mall, there are no consumers coming in because of lockdown. You have to pay high rentals, you have to pay salaries. I think there were existential questions for a few of the businesses, the service industry. Supply chains were disrupted because of change which happened across different behaviors which are playing out. How do you reimagine your business in that environment, right? Behaviors were changing. We had people who never used technology before were suddenly using technology for maybe medical appointments, for using fintech. So I mean, fintech is a classic example in India, which has disrupted the entire digital payment revolution. We are leading the world in terms of how we are changing the behavior. And I think I want to add, sometimes behavior leads you to make a change. Sometimes good companies shape that behavior of their consumers with how they interact with their consumers. And Apple, I think, is a classic example who have leveraged innovation, who have shaped behaviors ahead of time. Sometimes when you look at a product, you feel, listen, this is not going to work because nobody's going to use it. Are you able to shape that preference of your consumer? And great companies have that knack, leveraging that insight. And I think Suresh spoke about how do you use different data sources? Because there's so much of data available today. There's so much of insights available from different sources. How do you make value out of that and create a business model where you can disrupt yourself? Because you need to sometimes disrupt your own business if you want to leverage that value. It's not easy. But if you are able to do that, I'm sure you're going to be able to disrupt your competition and staying ahead of the game. So I think, culture, people, eventually it's all about how you are leveraging technology, how you are leveraging data, and how your people intellect capability is being able to synthesize all this together to be ahead of the game and try and disrupt the market.
Let me come across to you, Divya. We've discussed about challenges, but let's now discuss about the opportunities that arise when organizations adopt continuous reinvention as a capability.
Thanks for that question, Shweta. Indeed, embracing a continuous total enterprise reinvention can unlock several benefits for companies. It can help companies with opportunities to innovate better, to be more agile, to improve their competitiveness. We've spoken about how customer is at the center of total enterprise reinvention. So certainly opportunities to significantly improve your customer experience. We've spoken about talent. So how do you attract and retain top talent is another important lever that you can really sort of unlock with total enterprise reinvention. And leveraging ecosystem alliances, partnerships to grow strategically and internationally and globally. So these are all opportunities that companies can sort of, like I said, unlock with total enterprise reinvention. If I take the example of a data-driven operating model, now here, clients have the opportunity to really isolate your operating model and address the challenges in a progressive, strategic, and deliberate manner. And I might also add, it's an iterative process. So very different from the big bang transformations of the past, which are looked at as a one-time finite activity. You have AI-powered tools which give you a 360-degree insight into your organization, the talent, the skills and capabilities that you already have, and also identify gaps that you need to fill in order to, in a sense, future-proof your workforce and really, build that workforce of the future. So I think in all, there's tremendous opportunities that companies have, should they embrace this continuous total enterprise reinvention. And just outside, we've got several booths that showcase how we are leveraging, TER for consumer goods companies as well. So something that I think, if you've not already taken a look, please do spend some time there.
Let me come across to Puneet Jain now. Puneet, as members of the media fraternity, we know what's happening with AI and media, right? We're talking about ChatGPT writing speeches, writing headlines, stories. How do you see the industry adopting to the disruption that we are seeing in the digital media space? And do you see a tussle between legacy versus new age media, or do you think they'll converge successfully?
I think all of us, and as you mentioned, media businesses in general in India are going through a massive transformation because of the unprecedented disruption we are seeing in the external ecosystem, right? So so let me talk about how let's say HT we are approaching it, and perhaps various other players in the space. we are looking at it in three ways. First and foremost, I think building out a differentiated product and engagement offering. Second is a more sustainable and diversified revenue model. And third is a foundational layer of data, technology, and data sciences to power the various initiatives, right? Elaborating on one of the most important, the first one, I think the differentiated product portfolio and offering. Historically or traditionally, in almost all media businesses, whether it's television, print, or the original digital of 5 years back, right? The priority has been to maximize the reach. I mean, the way I think it was simplified as more the reach, more robust the revenue model. So let's just, and of course, India offers the opportunity of engaging with millions and millions of Indians, given our large population. I think what has happened is with the proliferation of social media and so on and so forth, reach is table stakes, right? So hence, the focus or the important is to move from a reach priority to an engagement priority. So how often you are able to get your users back? How often you are able to retain them back? Are you able to build a more deeper product offering which goes beyond the traditional definition of news? So that's one part of it. Other part is simply moving from a content-first strategy to an audience-first strategy. I mean, historically, the editorial would define one form, sort of a home page or the front page of a newspaper or the top headlines, and that would serve the needs of most of the consumers around it. But that's not the case anymore. It's depending upon which audiences you want to cater to. You need to understand their needs and preferences better and build out your content according to them. So it's audience first versus content first, right? And similarly, the relevance of emerging verticals. So historically, a media organization would touch upon various aspects of news, like your political news or sports news, entertainment, and just look to maximize breadth. Again, now the transformation we are seeing, which perhaps is most sustainable, is focusing on depth versus breadth. So maybe pick a few areas, but build a much more integrated and engaged offering versus trying to solve for needs of everyone. So that's, I think, a massive shift. And in terms of revenue model, what we are seeing is historically, most media businesses, both India and elsewhere, have been focused on monetizing through ads, and that's been also one type of ads. What we are seeing is now, first, we have to go beyond ads. So all of us are building reader revenue models, whether it's subscription or commerce. That's extremely important to be able to offer a more sustainable revenue strategy. At the same time, because ads will continue to be the single largest source of monetization, how do you offer more targeted, more relevant ad offerings in line with how the big tech has been able to build up? So that's happening on the monetization front. Thirdly, I think, which has been touched upon by various, I think, especially experts from Accenture around the digital core. I think, and in my view, that's the biggest change. Traditionally, news businesses have always been like the hotbed and the epicenter of the best quality content and journalism. But when it comes to product and tech talent and associated product and tech architecture, I think we have lagged behind. So how do we embrace those skill set, which are not necessarily part of our natural organization and certainly get from outside, and build out a more robust backbone which can drive data centricity, which can drive democratization of decision making, which can drive building products which profile individuals versus demographics. Historically, we will build products basis, hey, these are the 4 demographics we want to cater to, and that's the product. Now I think we have reached a stage, and thanks to Spotify and to the world who have taught us, right? Every user is an individual. And if your playlist can be different for every user in this gathering, why can't your news and information need has to be personalized basis that? So yeah, I think that's you're looking at it, and I believe future is bright.
I'd like to come across to you, Mr. Rajkiran. You know, we understand that ecosystem partnerships play a crucial role in reinvention, but how do you see the role of partners evolving in today's context to enable successful reinvention?
So normally we don't have a choice. It's an options choice. Why? You know, when Mr. Narayanan says that they are reinventing and a brand like Nestle, Mr. Ajay says Maruti Suzuki is reinventing. We as logistics service providers don't have a choice. So we have to reinvent because ultimately the entire change is to fulfill a demand which leads to a customer satisfaction or customer delight. So if our clients change, we need to change. So let me tell you a couple of examples. Normally we take reinvention as a paradigm shift. It might be that culture, it's something which we echo as a company with what Mr. Narayan said. It is also small steps, which is Kaizen. So if you have a culture of Kaizen, you lead to a paradigm shift. So a couple of examples. We had a situation where we had to start a project to a very large multinational engineering and electrical giant from Europe. And they had 20 plants and fulfillment centers where multiple types of pickups had to be done. And they used to get, say, 100 orders a day. Historically, the process was manual. And every person who was giving the order felt that it's very important as far as they are concerned. So how do you do it? So that's how today's technology of what we were speaking, the bot and a web crawler came into place. And the entire system became digital till the time that the delivery is done and you get it on a WhatsApp. So this is the change we are seeing in an industry, by the way, where we all, including you, are all dependent on that driver, the milkman, and at the lowest level to deliver something. We may all be gaga about virtual world, but we all live physically. So let's not forget that aspect, that when you coin in the word reinvent, it is the bridge between virtual to physical and how we go about, whether you do it in small steps or the way we did, cutting across the value chain and making it digital. So this is one of the changes we are seeing. Another aspect is how do you build a change in an industry which historically only got its due during COVID. So people all started saying, where's my delivery? And we all got the importance. So suddenly our jobs became much more lucrative and people said, the delivery guy is very critical or the warehouse guy is critical. The key aspect is to create actually the levers, and these levers are through partners. So partners such as Accenture or any other consultant, you need to have them on board because they give you outside in view. We always don't know what we don't know, is what we believe. So that's outside in view comes from consultants. Your vendors, especially global vendors, will teach you how to build something. We will not know everything, but the global vendors will help you to reinvent. And that's what happened. We helped the company to remove entire plastic, again what Mr. Narayan alluded, in the supply chain for products such as salt and soda ash, which are so elementary that nobody thought that we could remove 50 kg HDP bags. And we could remove because the vendor helped us. So they helped us to reinvent the entire value chain. So this is another example of what we see. Most importantly, in our company, we've created Center of Excellence for Digital Transformation, and we learn from customers. So you visit customers, they will teach you. So that helps you in collaborative reinventing. So I believe customers will help you to learn. Second, how do you build sustainability? We recently tied up with IIM Bangalore to create a sustainability lab for the entire industry. We felt that our industry doesn't get what you call as the blessings of the global agencies. So we said, why don't we create ourselves? Because the smallest element has to be brought into the system. Something which Mr. Ajay was also mentioning when we were off this session, that how do we get tier 5 to reduce the carbon? It's the same thing. How do I get my vendor partners to also ensure that their carbon emission is less and they adopt electric vehicles or a sustainable vehicle? I have to take care of the guy who has 10 vehicles. So as a leader in this space, we said, let's create a lab which will ensure that we are able to pass on the knowledge, and most importantly, and the last statement is where, again, picking up the cue from Mr. Narayan, is execution. We're all practitioners. We can talk the big language, but at the end of the day, are we able to A, conceptualize and execute and bring it back as a feedback. Thus, we will ensure that there's a continuous improvement and you achieve the goal. So these are some aspects as far as our industry is concerned. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Very quickly, Mr. Dawar, none of this is possible without talent, right? So how do you ensure that we build the right skills and capabilities to progress in this reinvention journey?
No, so on talent, I think, once again, I guess there are 2-3 things to think about. One is leadership and culture. I think enough has been said about culture, so I'm going to skip that in detail. I'd say the second and third are also very important. The second is about a fluid workforce. And I think more and more companies are banking beyond the borders of their own organization in order to get talent. And there are marketplaces available today, like TopTal, for example, to get talent for, let's say, digitally savvy people to help you with your digital transformation journey. So companies have to think beyond the traditional, I'm going to recruit the people and I'm going to use them, partnering with the agencies to get top talent. And I think the third is upskilling, and I think Ajay talked about skilling, but I just want to delve a bit more deeper into that because here you've got to use a triple strategy. It's build, borrow, buy. You've got to use all three. You build on capabilities which are already strong within the organization, but you have to buy those capabilities which you think are going to take very long to actually build. And I'll take the Accenture example here, where when we created a business for becoming the largest interactive agency in the world, we couldn't have done it internally. So we actually acquired a host of companies. And through that, we actually built this practice for design, build, communicate, and how do you actually build intelligence into the customer interactions. And then finally, you've got to also partner. So again, taking our own example, if you have to improve the technology quotient of your own people, we partnered with an agency to actually have multiple modules for making our employees digitally savvy. So things like blockchain or quantum computing, Gen AI, analytics, all of these, we built those modules in partnership with the company because that's their full-time job. And we trained over 750,000 people in these particular areas. So I think it's important to, especially around upskilling, think of all three avenues, build, borrow, buy.
Very quickly, just one piece of advice for the students here, because we are out of time, but one quick closing remark. Puneet, let's start with you. One piece of advice for the students here.
Prioritize learning over anything and everything. That should be your only focus area in the early part of your career.
Mr. Mehta?
I would say learn to disrupt yourself, otherwise you'll get disrupted.
I'll pick Suresh's words, and because I'm going to reuse them many times. He said tomorrow starts today, and so tomorrow is really the opportunity that you have, and the opportunity starts today.
I'd say always be curious and inquisitive, ask questions, and just go and seek out all of the information that you have now access to.
Since I've been long in the trenches, I think one piece of advice I would like to give the youngsters actually borrows from a doha of Kabir. And we are talking about reinvention and change, so it's applicable there. Kabir once beautifully said, he said, "Dhire dhire se mana, dhire sab kuch hoye, mali siiche sau ghada, ritu aaye, phalo hoye." You can do what you want to, only when spring comes, the fruit will arrive. So have temperance, have patience, have ambition, but be realistic in your expectations.
I think in the spirit of reinvention, what I'd like to just state is that given where medical technology is going, all of you are going to live hopefully to 100. So you're going to have to reinvent your careers many times over this period. Gone are the days where you retire at 60 and, live for the next 10, 15, 20 years. So you'll be working till 75, 80. So make sure you reinvent yourself. basis what's happening in the world out there, because that's the only way you'll stay ahead.
I'll stick to the one-liner. So unlearn the past and reinvent yourself to be future ready. I think that's the theme.
Be passionate, be bindas. That's it.
Thank you. Those pearls of wisdom coming in from the top leaders. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure talking to all of you. Lots of valuable takeaways. Thank you.
Accenture and Moneycontrol present B-School Strategy Challenge.